Okay, welcome to the 40 Days of Christmas Stories. I'm really excited to welcome Lois today. Welcome,
Hi.
Lois. I'm Tamayita, and I think this is about our 20th day of Christmas stories. And I'm so glad that you decided to join us to read. And first of all, we'd love to get to know you a little bit better. How long have you been at St. John?
Well, I think next year will have been 20 years. I can't believe that, We moved here to Portland about 20 years ago. We had lived in the South Coast area for 10 years and moved up here, and we had been investigating Orthodoxy for a few years, and when we came to Portland, we visited St. John's, and we felt it was a wonderful community to learn more about the faith in, and we were baptized in 2001 into the church. Not baptized, we were catechized, chrismated, and our whole family came in and been here ever since.
That is so special. Yes, I remember getting to meet your daughters around that time, so it was really special to meet all these beautiful young adult peers.
That's a blessing. And didn't you live with Christy for a while too?
One of my friends lived with Christy, but we did an iconography class together.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, we have a lot of good memories. So
yes, very good.
Anyway, so tell us, do you have any special Christmas traditions that you either practiced in the past or that you're looking forward to doing this year?
Well, I would say the biggest Russo tradition is every year, for as long as we've been married, we make ravioli, homemade ravioli, and we usually prepare them maybe a week before Christmas, and we get them all produced and put in the freezer, ready to serve on Christmas Day. And my husband, that was his tradition in his Italian home, and they would make homemade ravioli. And so we have done that for as long as we've been married, 47 years now. And so now we have the grandkids come and help, and we have a wonderful tradition going on. They love it. They love making ravioli.
That is incredibly special. I have never made homemade pasta, so I'm really impressed.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I kind of stay out of the way a little bit. It's the Italian thing, so but it's been great. It's been great.
That's so awesome. I bet that's very special for any recipient too of the ravioli.
It is. It's a special treat for sure.
That's cool. All right, so you're going to share not an Italian story, but a story from another part of your heritage.
Yes, I do have Swedish heritage, actually. You know that? Yeah. We're reading about Saint Lucia, Saint of Light. Should I just go ahead and start?
Sure.
Okay. Today is my name day. My name is Lucy, and this is December 13th, the feast of Saint Lucia. It's one of my favorite days of the year. On this day, I wake up early before it's light. My sisters and I put on long white gowns trimmed with lace. Kirsten and Ingrid are my attendants, and they wear sashes and wreaths of tinsel. I'm the Lucia bride, so I tie my gown with a wide red ribbon. On my head goes a crown made of lingonberry leaves that holds 7 candles. And when I put it on, I feel like St. Lucia herself, come to bring light and joy to the dark winter land. In the kitchen, I make a pot of coffee, and I pour it carefully into a blue and white china coffee pot my mother brought from Sweden. I put the coffee things on a tray with a plate of ginger cookies and special cross-shaped sweet buns called Lucia cuts. My sisters help me, but my brothers Lars and Carl are too busy goofing around, using their star boy hats for helmets and jousting with their star poles. Hush, I tell them, you're going to wake Mom and Dad. When everything is ready, I hold the tray and I lead the procession. We parade into my parents' bedroom and wake them up singing a song about Saint Lucia. And then we all sit on the big bed munching cats and gingerbread and singing Christmas carols. We're all so cozy. I wish this part of the day could last forever. But the rest of the day is fun too. When my parents are dressed, we go next door to visit Mrs. Sundstrom. We bring her coffee and cat buns, and we sing to her as well. When we finish, she has tears in her eyes, and she always says to me in her thick accent, "When I was a young girl in Sweden, I was the Lucia bride. You make me feel like a little girl in Sweden again." But my mother sits on the bed and talks to Mrs. Sundstrom in Swedish for a while. I guess they're probably talking about Sweden. I've never been to Sweden, but my mother grew up there. She was a Lucia bride when she was a girl too. And when she came to America and married my father, she brought the tradition with her. And once when I was younger, I asked her to tell me the story about St. Lucia and why we celebrate her the way we do. Well, it's kind of a peculiar story, my mother said. You see, St. Lucia isn't actually a Swedish girl. She was born in Sicily on an island off the coast of Italy. Back when St. Lucia was born in the late 3rd century, Sicily was part of the Roman Empire, and Lucia's father was a wealthy nobleman. But he died when Lucia was a baby, and her mother raised her to be a Christian. But wasn't it against the law to be a Christian back then, I asked? My mother smiled. You've been paying attention to the saints' lives in church, haven't you? Yes, it was against the law, and Christians had to hide their faith, or they risked being arrested, tortured, or even put to death. You had to love God very much to take that risk. Lucia grew up loving God with all of her heart, and she loved him so much that she didn't want to marry anyone but her heavenly bridegroom, Jesus Christ. But her mother, Eudokia, didn't understand this. Evdokia, that's her name, Evdokia, didn't understand this, and she arranged for Lucia to marry a man who was a pagan. Oh, I forgot to show you the picture. After this, Evdokia became very ill, and Lucia persuaded her mother to go on a pilgrimage with her to St. Agatha's tomb. And there, Lucia had a vision. St. Agatha appeared to her and told her God was pleased with her desire to remain a virgin. Evdokia was healed, and Lucia begged her mother not to force her into marriage, but to let her give her dowry away to the poor instead. In those days, a girl could not be married without a dowry. Like the girls in the St. Nicholas story, I said. St. Nicholas left money in their stockings so they could get married. That's right. Well, after a while, Lucia's fiance heard that she and her mother were giving all their money to the poor. He wasn't happy about that at all. In fact, he was so angry that he went to the governor of the island, Paschasius, and told him that Lucia was a Christian. Paschasius had Lucia arrested and brought before him. He commanded her to sacrifice to the idols, but she, of course, refused. She said she had given everything she owned as a sacrifice to Jesus Christ, and now she was ready to offer her life to him as well. But when the soldiers tried to take her away to torture her, the Holy Spirit made her so heavy she could not be moved. And they tried pulling her with ropes and even tying her to several yoke of oxen, but nothing could make her budge from the spot. And then, in a rage, Paschasius ordered that she be burned, and the soldiers piled wood around her and lit the fire. But Lucia prayed to God, and the fire did not so much as singe a hair on her head. She only glowed with a holy light through the flames. Finally, one of the soldiers drove his sword into her throat. Lucia said one last prayer, and then she gave up her spirit into the hands of her heavenly bridegroom. She was buried with honor and became the patron saint of her city, Syracuse. I snuggled closer to my mother, and the story was scary, but it gave me a warm glow inside to know that I was named for such a brave and holy girl. But I was still confused. If Lucia is the patron saint of Syracuse, how come they celebrate her in Sweden? Oh, the Swedes love St. Lucia because she saved Sweden from a terrible famine back in the Middle Ages. The people of southern Sweden were starving, and on the darkest day of the most terrible winter of all, they saw a boat sailing toward them across Lake Bonum. One of those Viking boats with a dragon on it? I suppose so. But instead of a dragon's head at the prow, there stood a beautiful maiden, dressed all in white and glowing with an unearthly light. The people stood amazed as the boat glided toward the shore, with no wind and no oars to propel it, no man at the tiller to guide it. And when the boat reached land, St. Lucia handed out huge sacks of wheat to all the people until the boat was empty, and the people would have bread to eat all winter long. My mother smiled. Any more questions, my curious Lucy cat? Oh, I thought for a minute. Why do we wear white dresses? Well, because St. Lucia was the bride of Christ, and the red sash is a symbol of martyrdom. And we go to visit people like Mrs. Sundstrom because St. Lucia went to visit the poor and the prisoners. My mother gave me a squeeze. That's right. I sighed happily. My saint was not only brave, but kind as well. Is that why Lucia brides wear candles on their heads? Because she was glowing in the boat? Well, partly that. There was also a legend that Lucia used to visit Christians hiding in the catacombs. In order to keep her hands free to carry the food she brought them, she wore candles on her head. Well, that legend might have started because the name Lucia comes from the Latin word for light. And also, her day falls in the darkest part of the winter. In Sweden, the winter nights are very long indeed, with only a few hours of daylight. So St. Lucia came to be associated with the return of light. What about the Lucia cats? I asked. Oh, they symbolize the wheat she brought in the famine, and they're shaped like a cross because St. Lucia was martyred for Christ. But where does the coffee come in? My mother laughed. That's just because Swedes love their coffee. She sipped from her steaming mug to prove it. I took a cat bun off the heaping plate on the coffee table and thought all about the people St. Lucia had fed. Mom, can we take these buns over to the Leboviches? I bet they don't get treats like this very often. She kissed the top of my head. Oh, that's a wonderful idea, sweetheart. And we can sing for them too. Oh, can you see that last page? I know it's kind of hard to see. So that's the end.
Wow.
Beautiful story. Wow.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I like how the author was able to like write a nice story, but also like include a lot of explanation for all those questions we might have about.
Yes, and it's a very serious story, and to write it, in such a beautiful way that can touch all ages, and so much truth in this story, and it, we are so drawn to the light, and Lucia was certainly that saint of light that still leads the way today, her light of Christ.
That's beautiful. Did you?
Thank you. Thank you for letting me read it. It was very special. Not
Yeah.
only because my mom is 100% Swedish, and I'm married to 100% Italian. And so I kind of melded my two heritages there, and thinking about the famine in Sweden. As I was reading it, I was thinking, my ancestors would have experienced that, and it really kind of made me choke up a little bit, just,
Wow.
thinking about that, as I was reading it, it just hit me all of a sudden. But thank you for asking me to read this story.
Oh, yes. I mean, I know I thought of you. I always think about your Swedish heritage because I know that either you or your daughters have talked about it and have a lot of love for Saint Lucia or Lucia.
Mhm.
I'm actually glad you used both ways of saying it because we know some people go by Lucy and Lucia and Lucia. So it's
And
great.
I have a very sweet Lucia in my family, our granddaughter Lucy.
Oh,
And Carrie will make the Lucia buns. They do it all up, and Lucy will wear her crown of candles, and it's beautiful.
awesome. Yeah, that's so special. And I was just thinking as you were reading that you have such a beautiful way of reading.
Oh, thank you.
Your grandchildren are really lucky to have you.
Oh, they're way past me in reading. They read themselves.
Well, but I'm
But
sure
thank you. Yeah. Thank
some of
you.
their love of story time or books from you
Yes.
from
Yeah.
you. So,
Thank you.
yeah, so thanks again for reading that. I'm really excited that we got to do that, especially with somebody that has some Swedish heritage as we head into the weekend because we are celebrating St. Lucia
Yes.
Sunday. So,
Beautiful. Well, thank you for letting me read, and I'll go grab my Swedish cup of coffee now.
okay, sounds great.
All
Thank
right. Have a great day.
you. Bye.